Everyone's been waiting for this video, I think. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But if you've been following my journey here on YouTube, you know that I've been living in South Africa. I originally lived in Tanzania. And in this video, I'm going to compare my experiences of living in both Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Johannesburg, South Africa. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, I'm Ashley on my channel, Ashley in Africa. I talk about my experience of living, moving, and doing business here on the continent. If you're not new, welcome back. We're growing, and I want to take a few steps back and just share a bit of my story for people that are new to the channel. I know that there's a ton of videos that you can watch and binge, and I love getting messages about how you guys are binging the content. I'm so happy that it's helpful. But for those that haven't really gotten a chance to see the full journey, I'm going to give you a little bit of story if that's okay. So if you're interested in this type of content, please be sure to like it and share it with someone else who will also find value in it. So in the year of 2020, when the world stood still and everybody was at home, I had the courageous thought of moving abroad. And it was something that I always wanted to do. However, at that time, I was and am still a mom. But I had been laid off of my job and my girls were remote learning. And so everything was still. And being, staying at home and sheltering in place was getting overrated. And the US was shut down. A lot of countries were not allowing travel during that time. And I knew if I was going to be locked down for what felt like the rest of our lives, I wanted to do it in a place that felt good. And at the time, for people who lived in the US, tensions were high, political tensions were high, the COVID numbers were increasing, and it was just a lot. Mentally, I was not okay, and I needed a retreat. And so I did some planning, I did some strategizing, and in less than 6 months, I decided that I was going to move abroad and to the continent of Africa, right? I decided in less than 6 months that I was going to do it, and I actually did it. So if you want to learn how to do that, be sure to check the link below for the Expat Expense. It is the course where I teach people how to financially prepare so that they have the confidence to move abroad, specifically to the continent of Africa. But I walk them through how to choose a country, how to understand the cost of living, how to start today so that you can have the financial confidence to take action, and how to make sure that you put certain things in place and have a strategic plan so that your family is taken care of in the event of an untimely death or disability while you're abroad, because those things really happen. And for a lot of people who are concerned about aging parents or children, that can sometimes be the thing that keeps them. And so when I share my story about how I did it very drastically, I had nothing else to do but make a plan, and I stuck to it. I made it happen and I executed it. And it's been 3 years since. And so now I'm teaching people that also have the desire to do it as well. So the Expat Expense is via the link below. And for those that book the Expat Expense this month, we're also going to have a private Q&A with myself so that you can get all your questions answered. All right. And that's been a really great tool. It's actually been one of the most popular. And so when people talk about their 5-year plan or their 3-year plan, hey, it's fine. But for me, I had a sense of urgency. I wanted to not see a lot of the things that I was seeing. So I wanted to change my environment, and thus I did, right? I moved to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I had friends there. I had created some relationships there. I consulted with a few experts and I made my move. And for 2 full years, I was living in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and just loving it. During that time, I made a trip to South Africa and realized, oh, this is Africa. It was everything and more I could have imagined. And so for the first 2 years while I was on the continent, I wasn't really working. I had started a couple of businesses, but I was on a pure sabbatical. I was working 60 hours a week, a very high performing executive in the tech space, and then also economic development space and the marketing and brand development space. Black women, we have like all these skills. We're doing multiple people's jobs while we're in these jobs. And we also feel we need to have all the skills, right, to be dynamic and competitive. So I had all of these skills and I just completely burnt out. So those 2 years were everything for me, everything that I needed. And so in the beginning of my move, I got a lot of questions about why did I choose to move to South Africa? And I still do, because I consult with families every day almost on how to make the move as well. And they ask me, why Tanzania or why South Africa? And I think I made it really clear that I like to spend time in both, because both places have a beautiful space in my heart. And while I have much more of the continent to explore, I'm going to specifically talk about the differences for me, and for maybe some other people that might identify with my story, that might be able to relate to my story, and how they're making their decision in choosing a home country. So I definitely have my notes, and full disclosure and disclaimer, South Africans, y'all, I love y'all. Y'all go hard, right, for your home. And you already know how I feel about South Africa and Tanzania. For the most part, y'all are pretty laid back. So I don't expect super craziness in the comments, but just bear with me. This is my experience, and this is these are my experiences and how I'm communicating to people that watch this content, so that they can get an idea of why or how to choose their next home country, or a country that they want to visit and do their discovery trips, from moving from specifically from the West, right? More industrialized, developed nations. So I'm going to start with culture, right? The culture of Tanzania and South Africa are completely different. Right? Completely different. Both are very rich in history, very rich in traditions. But I will say that in Tanzania, there weren't as many tribes as here in South Africa that I ran into, specifically in Dar es Salaam. And it also wasn't this overt communication of tribes, right? Like how it is here, because there's a language difference. And that could have probably been happening. I just wasn't aware, because I do recognize that the language of Swahili, which is spoken in Tanzania, has different dialects in different parts of the region with different tribes. But being here in Johannesburg specifically, people speak everything, but Johannesburg is majority Zulu spoken, but also English, right? So culture, as far as traditions and ways of being, very different. And I'm going to speak specifically just of my experience in Dar es Salaam, which was the major and largest city in Tanzania, and being in Johannesburg, which is one of the most major cities, and I think probably biggest populated. So they both are the most populated cities in their country. And I chose the city because I was coming from the city. So I wasn't necessarily ready to be in the rural area. However, in Dar es Salaam, I lived an hour outside of the city, but was still close to a lot of different, restaurants and, conveniences. However, nothing like here in Johannesburg, right? So I know I'm bouncing around, but when we're talking about culture specifically, I'd say the culture of South Africa is, I don't know if it's just me, but it feels more present here in Johannesburg than it did in Dar es Salaam. Now, culture is comprised of many things, right? Music, food, ways of dressing, even spirituality. Oh, and language. And so language, Swahili, like people are speaking Swahili. It's very important to know, the minimum of greeting, numbers, what to order, what to buy at markets, and how to negotiate. So it is important to learn the language of Swahili. So in that way, culture is 1,000% present in Dar es Salaam. Music, yeah, Tanzanians have their own music for sure, right? So I definitely got, familiar with Diamond Platinum, and I think is it Uchu, And, you know, just kind of the mashup of like African and Arabic sound is definitely, is for sure thick and a thing. But I heard a lot of other music from like, especially Amapiano and Afro beats when I would go out. So it wasn't super exclusive to the Tanzanian music. As far as food, yes, Tanzanians have their way of cooking. They have their signature dishes. And yeah, I think you can go to restaurants and find traditional Swahili food anywhere and everywhere. For the most part, though, that's what you're gonna find in restaurants is Swahili food. There are other international cuisines, but not as much. So if you're going to a not shisha nyama, that is South African, but it is called a, why can't I think of it? It's called a, I forgot. I'll remember. But their form of barbecue is something, right? And those are everywhere on literally every street. So now that I think about it, the culture is very present in Tanzania. Like, it's very present. I misspoke. But I think I personally connect more to the culture of South Africa, even though I felt like I was integrating very well with the culture in Tanzania. There were some things, right? I think Dar es Salaam, for me, it was a very religious culture. So whether you were a Muslim or Christian, people are very committed externally to their religion. Now, what they're doing behind closed doors, you know, but regardless of, you're going to see people's WhatsApp and they're going to be talking about Allah or Jesus every Sunday and Friday and Wednesday and sometimes Saturday. But yeah, culture is very present, and it's important to understand, respect, and learn the culture in both places. But like I said, I connect more with the culture of South Africa. I think that there are so many different similarities that I identify with, but they're both very present in both societies, and something that I think is really important for you to learn, understand, and ultimately respect. The next thing is kind of ease of life, right? Also known as peace. Dar es Salaam translates to city of peace. And you definitely feel it when you arrive in Tanzania. At least I did. That was what I was seeking. That is what I found. And that is what I embodied, a level of peace when I was living in Dar es Salaam. The ease of living is also there if you're willing to take it. So I saw the, underdevelopment as an ease, right? It took me a while to get used to the dirt roads and, kind of how to handle certain things, but there were certain luxuries that you just can't, that are priceless. Being able to walk out your door and go to a market right there and get fresh fruits and vegetables. A woman walking by with the boga boga, the vegetable woman, or a gentleman walking by and selling fresh fish that he just, got out of the ocean that morning. There were easy things that, just made it a different ease of life. I could take a boda boda anywhere, which is a motorcycle, for, a couple hundred T-shilling, right? And that's like translates to cents, not even $1, depending on how far I was going, to the ocean, to the doctor, to the pharmacy. Really short trips were the only ways that I traveled on boda bodas, but there was an ease of doing life there that I absolutely loved. When the power would go out, because it would, I just got comfortable with taking traditional baths because it wasn't a big thing. So, there was an ease of life that came with living in Dar es Salaam that at the time in my life, I 1,000% needed. I'd say that now in Johannesburg, it's not as it's a different ease, but it's not the same, right? I live in a very developed part of the city. You know, it's just like being kind of in the US, in where I moved from in Atlanta. There's not much that's different. I live in an area that allows me to have ease of access to restaurants, parks, the gym, different doctors, grocery stores, athletic facilities. And so there is also an ease here, but it's different. It's a different ease. So, you know, obviously Johannesburg is one of the most developed cities in Africa. Dar es Salaam is one of the fastest developing cities, but very different quality of life, and ease of life. But I'd say that there's just beauty in both. So that's kind of hard to compare. The next thing is the people. So I love the South African people. Again, I also just relate to them in a different way than I did in Dar es Salaam. However, I love the people of Dar es Salaam. People in Dar es Salaam are very friendly, very helpful, you know, and I did experience, I think, when there was a language barrier, that sometimes people are so helpful that they just want to agree with you because they don't want to disappoint. Now, this can look different in different situations, but I found that that was mostly the case, where people were wanting to help and wanting to say that they could do things, even if they couldn't, because they wanted to be of help. And I think for some that can be problematic, but again, going back to the culture, if you understand the culture of the people, you'll also understand how to relate to the people. And language is a big thing. So learning the language removes a lot of confusion that I think a lot of Westerners have, specifically African Americans, when moving to the continent. But the people in South Africa, friendly, amazing. I will say this, African Americans, there is nothing, the first things we should learn and know when we are in these countries, learn how to greet. It's free, it's easy, it doesn't take a lot of time. I know some people are like, oh, no, I don't, you know. But when I tell you the people, the way they respond to you when you attempt to greet them in their native tongue, or a tongue that they understand outside of English, they'll receive you like so differently. So for the bare minimum in Swahili, learning how to say habari, or, you know, habari dada, habari kaka, or habari shangazi, or uncle, that's how are you, or shikamo, which is a greeting for an elder person, which means may I bow at your feet. Just that small thing, nzima, salama, mzuri, like there's follow-up. But if you just start off with the basic, habari or shikamo, here in South Africa, I'm learning. So sawubona, njani, giapila, wena, njani is the conversation, or dumela, keteng. Those are, I think that's Swana. The first was Zulu. Just learning how to greet, like, please, please, please. If you want people to receive you well, I invite you to greet them by just entering their space, asking them how they are doing, thank you, and then proceeding on with your question, even if you say it in English. But once you can try it in their native tongue, like, I'm telling you, you're winning. They'll literally do whatever you ask because you're genuinely engaged and interested in helping them. I've had people, I'm asking for directions, they will guide me to the place if it takes them 10, 15, 20 minutes, you know, just because I greeted them. And I teach my children the same, because it's just very, very important. So that's all in the people. Obviously, I love the people. African people in general are just very helpful, very loving, very welcoming. And I've experienced that both Dar es Salaam and South Africa. So, and Johannesburg of South Africa, and mostly everywhere else I've gone in South Africa. Actually everywhere, actually everywhere. So I hope this is helpful. If this is helpful, please like it. Like the video, comment below what you're resonating with the most or what you're concerned with the most about the things that I've already shared. I have like a really long list, so this video is going to be a bit long, but I haven't done a long one in a while. So hopefully you're excited and you'll value this. For people that are making decisions about moving abroad and seeing my journey from country to country, these are the differences that I've experienced. Quality of life. So I talked a little bit about the ease of life, quality of life. Listen, I will say that let's connect with quality of life and cost of living. If you want more of a laid back, off the grid, analog lifestyle, then Dar es Salaam as a city and outside parts of Dar es Salaam might give you that. If it's really important for you to, I find value in both, right? And I'm getting stumped because I've had a beautiful experience in both countries. I will say that you can live a great quality of life in both. I think if you are older and you desire more laid back, peaceful, look at the stars, eat your fruits and vegetables, harvest your own fruits and vegetables, then Tanzania and different parts of the regions in Tanzania might be your jam. Because the land of Tanzania is so fertile. East Africa is such a breadbasket where everything is available because it's a tropical environment. So everything, from fruits and vegetables and livestock is pretty much available. And there's not a lot of importing of food unless it's processed food, thus making the cost of food a bit more higher if you're importing. Here in South Africa, I'm in Johannesburg, so I'm in the city. I have a great quality of life here as well. It's a bit more expensive because I'm also in the city. If I were living in the outskirts or maybe an hour outside of Johannesburg, I'm sure that would be lower. But I wanted that level of life here. I wanted the ability to, go to different restaurants, go to an Italian restaurant or an Indian restaurant within 5 minutes, or a shisha nyama, or seafood restaurant, or a Greek restaurant, or Thai. I wanted that experience, and I have that experience. So it depends on what is important for you around that quality of life. In Dar es Salaam, I had a trainer who came to my home. Here, I walk to a park, and I also can walk to the gym. So I couldn't do that. It was like an hour, 45-minute ride to the gym in Dar es Salaam. So it's really about looking at what's important to you and identifying from there. So as I mentioned, the expat expense will help you to kind of identify that country that of interest. But on our free and private Q&A that we're having with this cohort, you will be able to sign up, and get that one-on-one time with me where I can listen to what your needs are and then communicate back what my experiences can offer in terms of what's important to you. I hope that's helpful. If we're looking at infrastructure, it's very clear South Africa is the most developed country on the continent. So infrastructure is hands down amazing here. Now we are having load shedding, but it's getting better. It's scheduled power outages versus in Dar es Salaam. You don't really know when the power is going to be out unless it's a really big issue. So power outages and water outages happen in both countries, but I've noticed that the area that I live, which is said to be kind of a more upmarket or affluent area, we have not experienced water outages and we experience less scheduled power outages. So that's also something to consider. Roads here. There are parts of Johannesburg that I've been to where there are dirt roads, but these tend to be in like communities, so really big estates. But for the most part, it does depend. If you do want to live off grid, more analog in South Africa, you might have more of those challenges where infrastructure is not as developed. But here in the city of Johannesburg, infrastructure is not an issue at all. The next thing is ease of doing business. So I've done business in both. I'm doing business in both. I just took my braids out, y'all, so you can see my braid out is flourishing. And I just had to mention, and the skin is glowing. Ooh. Yes, guys. So ease of doing business, I'd say here in South Africa, it's a bit easier setting up a business. You don't need an attorney. It's really easy to do. But you should have an attorney. It's the number one tool for moving abroad and doing business, and even just moving abroad. Because English is, a national language, there's a bit more ease. It's a bit more straightforward than in Tanzania. However, it can be done. I have an excellent attorney who gets things done. So, South Africa has been built for foreigners to come in and do business and add value to the economy. Tanzania is actively going that way and actively being, a hub for business. President, Mama Samia Suleiman is invested in the future growth of Dar es Salaam and Tanzania specifically as a country, but Dar es Salaam will be, I think, the largest city in East Africa population wise, because she is invested in bringing business and investments to her country. So, I do think that ease of doing business is going to get better over time. But for now and today, the ease of doing business has really happened for me in Johannesburg. However, I have learned how to do business in Dar es Salaam too. So, that's a point to consider. Education. So I have two daughters and they're both in one primary, one is heading to secondary school. I'd say the education is great in both countries. In Dar es Salaam, they went to a international private school. Here in South Africa, they go to an African-centered private school. And I think finding an African-centered private school in Dar es Salaam delivered curriculum by Africans was really challenging to find, if not unavailable. But here, that was very important to me. And I'm not saying it's very common, because the school that they go to, I was very intentional, where they're learning African language, they're learning African geography and African history. And it's also globally competitive, very rigorous. And so I'd say education, if you have children, for both, amazing. I will say that au pairs are also widely available here. So these are students pursuing education or psychology that are looking to work with children in the universities, because there is such a large university system here in South Africa. You can also homeschool with the support of an au pair that is going to be completely dedicated to the development and support of your children. So that's a service that is not as widely available in Dar es Salaam, I noticed, where here it's very much available and it's very much a thing. So education, both comparable. I still stay in contact with the principal from my girls' school in Tanzania. And I'm very much involved in the community of parents and teachers here in South Africa. But I think comparably, they're both exceptional. And your children are going to thrive. If coming from the US, they're going to be challenged, but they're also going to literally, get smarter because they're going to be learning African language in their curriculum. The next thing is, I'd say politics, right? So when I talked about the conservative nature of Tanzania as a country, it is tongue-in-cheek, if not a thing, to speak negatively of the government. It is just not allowed. If you're doing so in public, you can be punished. And so freedom of speech is not really a thing. Culturally, it is not a thing. You do not speak against leadership in the country of Tanzania. Now, it happens privately in friend groups, privately in your own home, but for the most part, it is not a thing. Versus here in South Africa, South Africans are very critical, very self-critical, and very geopolitically aware. So I will say that the awareness and the intellect that is present here in South Africa, because of the way that they're learning and they live geopolitics from the media, economics, and politics worldwide. Like, they're very much aware of what's happening all over the world, and thus are very critical of their leadership and the leadership of other nations as well. Versus in Tanzania, it's just not a thing. You do not talk about what's going on in politics or political parties. You just refrain from it. And so if that's something that's really important for you to be able to speak out, I really try not to speak out about government because I'm not a citizen. So my opinion really doesn't matter. If I'm in community with my friends and they want to chat, we'll chat. And but I really don't have a whole lot to say because I'm still learning and I'm still getting familiarity with the lay of the land. But I will say that the promise of both of these countries is so incredible to watch. And I'm excited to see how the people of South Africa and the people of Tanzania take this time and invest in the future growth of their countries, because it's just a beautiful time to live on the continent of Africa. And so those are the differences for me. Ultimately, I chose to live in South Africa because I wanted to get back to work. My skills translated well here, and I felt more connected with the culture and the people. And it's just a beautiful country to live in, honestly. I absolutely love Tanzania. It will forever remain a place in my heart, and I'll continue to do business there as long as the people of Tanzania will have me. But if you are considering a move abroad and you want to talk through these things and how to take discovery trips, who you need to connect with, we'd love to have you in the Expat Expense. We are having our private Q&A session on October 28th, so you have until then to book it. We're celebrating 3 years on the continent, and because of that, I'm selling the Expat Expense, our most popular tool, for 40% off, and giving you the bonus of the private Q&A session. So I'd love to see you there. If you would like to join us, the link is in the description as well as in the pinned comment. Check us out, meet me in the private Q&A, and I'll see you then.